Uh, Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My colleagues from the Ministry of Health and Welfare and the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have just provided you with a comprehensive briefing on the current situation of COVID-19 in Korea and the robust and innovative measures we are taking to contain the COVID-19. On my part, I would like to highlight certain notable points of the responses my government is taking, focusing on Korea's external relations with other countries in dealing with this health emergency. Before starting my remarks, I would like to note that many of you present here covered the COVID-19 situation in Korea and provided a fair assessment of the Korean government's responses. I thank you very much for that. As you have just heard, we have mobilized not only our scientific and technological resources, but delved into innovative tools as well. Korea has the best diagnostic capability by far, testing up to 15,000 cases per day, as we have heard. We have been innovative in pioneering tools such as drive-through testing stations and smartphone applications to support our efforts. More importantly, my government has remained in combat with the COVID-19 while trying to avoid interrupting the ordinary daily life of people. We have shared with the public, both domestic and international, information on every development on the situation, as well as every policy direction and actions that my government takes with utmost openness and transparency from the very beginning. This is what Vice Minister Kim called a dynamic response system for open democratic societies. We are firm in our belief that public health challenges can only be overcome with public trust in our efforts, and that public trust can only be earned and harnessed through full openness and transparency. A recent study that analyzed worldwide epidemics since the 1960s came to the conclusion that adopting fact-based policymaking and sharing information with the public is the best strategy. As this is precisely the path my government has taken, there is a deep and wide public confidence in our diagnostic capabilities and quality of healthcare. This public trust has resulted in a very high level of civic awareness and voluntary cooperation that strengthens our collective efforts to overcome this public health emergency. Ladies and gentlemen, as Vice Minister Kim reiterated, the Korean government is in full cognizance of the importance of our strict adherence to the principles of openness and transparency. This feature of the Korean government's domestic response posture is reflected like a mirror image in its response to Korea's external interactions with other countries during the course of dealing with this health emergency. In this global age, where people travel freely, things move across borders, and we prosper because of it, the consensus among public health professionals seems to be that travel bans are not effective in containing contagious illnesses and can make things worse, even by fueling a sense of complacency. The WHO also repeatedly says, based on past experience and evidence, that restricting the movement of people and goods during public health emergencies is ineffective in most situations and may divert resources from other interventions. The WHO therefore recommends that any measures in relations to international traffic that significantly interfere with the movement of people and goods during public health emergencies needed to be proportionate to the public health risk and be short in duration and be reconsidered regularly as the situation evolves. The Korean government has taken this path from the very beginning. Despite the public pressures that called for stronger measures to restrict the influx of travelers into Korea, my government has not introduced any entry ban on inbound travelers, except those traveling from only a single most severely affected area in China. By introducing instead the special entry procedure aimed at enhanced health monitoring of travelers coming from certain areas and countries with higher risks, the Korean government was able to avoid an outright entry ban while minimizing the risk of expansion of disease. Maintaining this policy has been, of course, a daunting challenge, but the Korean government is determined to continue to comply with WTO recommendations with full confidence that it is the right way to follow. Despite the WTO's recommendations, travelers leaving from Korea or a certain part of the Korean territory are now facing some form of entry bans from more than 40 countries. I would like to emphasize that any travel restrictions on travelers from Korea should be commensurate with the facts, not based on a vague fear. In this context, please allow me to point out 3 facts here. 1, as Vice Minister Kim said, intensive tests are being undertaken for a certain target group of people in specified regional areas. When you spread the number of this testing to the wide nationwide average, 1 out of every 250 Korean people has been tested. 1 out of every 250 people. Paradoxically, as pointed out earlier, this high number of confirmed cases is the testament of the Korean government's thorough and rapid diagnostic screening. Second, the high level of public trust and civic awareness that has resulted in widespread voluntary self-containment, self-quarantine, and other preventive measures like social distancing is effectively slowing the spread of the outbreak. Third, the possible outflow from Korea of COVID-19 is strictly controlled. Individuals identified as close contacts of confirmed cases are not allowed to go abroad. Also, we are making the Incheon International Airport into a COVID-19 free zone and have made mandatory multi-step fever checks on all outbound passengers. Considering these points and other facts, I believe that the restrictive measures that have been imposed on people traveling from Korea requires a careful reconsideration and warrant lifting. I would like to urge once again, by taking advantage of this opportunity, countries imposing restrictions on travelers from Korea to review the facts of the situation in Korea and reconsider their measures. The WHO has shown continued trust in Korea's emergency response capability and its public health measures since the early stages of the outbreak. Recently, both the American and European chambers of commerce have made clear through their press briefings and releases that they are in full support of my government's response efforts and a high degree of transparency with full information disclosure. I sincerely hope that the members of the media present here today will be the eyes and ears of the COVID-19 situation in Korea and look not only at the rising number of the confirmed cases, but also look at what lies behind these numbers. Ladies and gentlemen, With the global spread of the virus seemingly underway, the situation calls for heightened international communication and cooperation in health security. We needed to guard not only against the spread of the virus, but also fear, discrimination, and isolation, all of which may strain our core values of free and open democracy. We all share the grave challenge to contain and control this epidemic and minimize its overreaching impact on our way of lives. In so doing, we hopefully shall not leave lasting scars on the spirit of free trade and movement of people, which is the basis of our shared prosperity. Thank you very much.